You can leave a relationship and still carry it everywhere. You stop answering. You stop visiting. You remove the name from your plans. From the outside, the ending looks complete. But inside, the argument continues. You rehearse what you should have said. You imagine the moment they finally understand what they did. You wonder whether leaving made you selfish. You check for evidence that they miss you, regret losing you, or have finally learned the lesson your pain was supposed to teach. So the person is gone, but the courtroom remains open. Anger is the prosecutor. Revenge is the audience. Guilt is the judge calling the case back into session. This is why walking away is not only a physical decision, it is a decision about what will govern your mind after the door closes. The goal is not to feel nothing. If you were betrayed, dismissed, manipulated, repeatedly disrespected, or exhausted by a relationship that asked you to abandon yourself, anger may be an honest response. Grief may be unavoidable. Guilt may arrive even when the decision is necessary. Stoicism does not ask you to become stone. It asks you to become responsible for what you do with what you feel. In this reflection, we will separate three things that are often fused together. We will separate anger from action, revenge from consequence, and guilt from responsibility. Then we will build a practical way to leave clearly, ethically, and without reopening the same decision every time someone disapproves. Because a clean exit is not an exit that feels painless. It is an exit you do not have to corrupt in order to survive. Anger often arrives before language. Your chest tightens. Your jaw becomes rigid. Your mind begins collecting evidence. Every old insult suddenly becomes available. You want to send the message now, make the decision now, expose the pattern now? Anger can tell you that a value, boundary, expectation, or sense of fairness has been violated. That information matters. But information is not instruction. A fire alarm can warn you about danger. It cannot tell you which exit is safe, whether someone needs help, or what must happen after the building is clear. Anger works in a similar way. It alerts, it narrows attention. It prepares force. It does not automatically provide wise judgment. This distinction matters because many destructive exits begin with a true observation and end with an uncontrolled action. The pattern may be real, the disrespect may be repeated, the relationship may need to end. But the message written at the highest point of anger often tries to do 5 things at once: explain, punish, expose, win, and leave. That is too much work for one message, and most of it does not belong to you. When anger is high, use a 24-hour rule whenever safety and practical obligations allow it. Do not make the final speech, do not post the evidence, do not recruit an audience. Write privately, walk, sleep, speak with one trustworthy person who is not invested in escalating the conflict. Then return to the question, what action would still make sense if the heat were lower? This is not passivity, it is command. You are not suppressing the signal. You are refusing to hand it the steering wheel. Anger becomes more useful when you ask what it is trying to protect. Sometimes it protects dignity. You were spoken to in a way you would never accept from yourself. Sometimes it protects time. You have spent months solving crises created by someone who refuses responsibility. Sometimes it protects truth. Your words are being repeatedly twisted until you no longer recognize the conversation. Sometimes it protects grief. Rage feels stronger than admitting that the relationship you hoped for does not exist. Name the protected value before you choose the action. Instead of saying, "I am furious," ask, "What was crossed?" Was it honesty, safety, reciprocity, privacy, reliability, or respect? Then ask a second question. What response would actually protect that value? If privacy was violated, revenge does not restore privacy. It creates another violation. If truth was distorted, a public attack may produce more distortion. If your time was consumed, spending 6 more weeks proving that you were right continues the loss. If dignity was ignored, behaving without dignity does not recover it. The right response may be a boundary, distance, documentation, a practical consequence, a direct conversation, or a complete exit. In serious situations involving safety, abuse, legal obligations, or shared finances, the wise response may include qualified, professional, or local support. Calm does not mean handling dangerous situations alone. The purpose of this question is not to excuse the other person. It is to prevent their conduct from selecting your character for you. Anger says, something must change. Wisdom asks, what change protects the value without creating a new injury? When you can answer that, anger has completed its first useful task. It has shown you the boundary. It does not need to write the rest of your life. Revenge is not always dramatic. It does not always look like public humiliation or a deliberate attack. Sometimes it looks like waiting for them to notice your silence. Sometimes it is posting a carefully chosen message so they understand what they lost. Sometimes it is becoming successful with one secret condition: they must eventually see it. The behavior may look like moving on. The attention is still facing backward. Revenge keeps the other person employed as the audience of your life. They remain the imagined witness to your discipline, your peace, your new relationship, your improved body, your work, your happiness. You are no longer asking for love, but you are still asking for a reaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, in one Project Gutenberg translation of Meditations, the best kind of revenge is not to become like unto them. That sentence is often repeated as a slogan. Its practical demand is harder. It means the injury does not grant permission to imitate what injured you. If they distort it, you do not distort it. If they used silence to punish, you do not turn your silence into punishment. If they made your worth depend on their approval, you do not make your healing depend on their regret. A consequence is different from revenge. A consequence protects reality. You end access because repeated conduct has made access unsafe or destructive. Revenge arranges the consequence to create pain and then watches to see whether it worked. Ask yourself, if they never regret it, never apologize, and never see the life I build, would this still be the right decision? If the answer is yes, you are approaching freedom. If the answer is no, the exit may still be necessary, but part of you is still negotiating with the audience. Many people avoid leaving because they confuse consequence with cruelty. They think a kind person must remain available. They believe compassion means one more conversation, one more exception, one more chance to prove that the pattern is real. But access is not a moral entitlement. You can care about someone and decide they can no longer occupy the same place in your life. You can understand why a person behaves as they do without volunteering to receive the behavior. You can hope they heal without making your nervous system, home, time, money, or attention the place where that healing is tested. A clean consequence has three qualities. First, it is connected to the behavior. If trust is repeatedly broken, access becomes limited. If conversations become abusive, the conversation ends. If an agreement is ignored, the arrangement changes. Second, it is within your control. You cannot force insight, remorse, treatment, maturity, or honesty. You can decide what you will participate in. Third, it does not require theatrical pain. The point is not to make the other person suffer enough to understand. The point is to stop participating in what violates your judgment. This is where quiet strength differs from coldness. Coldness says, your pain proves my power. Quiet strength says, your reaction does not change what I must responsibly do. Sometimes the kindest accurate sentence is simple. I am no longer willing to continue this relationship in its current form. I am not asking you to agree, but I am asking you to respect the decision. You do not need to sound invulnerable. You need to sound clear. The consequence is the changed access. The cruelty would be using that access as a weapon, opening and closing the door only to control the other person's behavior. Guilt can be morally useful, but it can also be socially conditioned discomfort. If you do not distinguish the two, Every disappointed reaction will feel like evidence that you have done something wrong. Useful guilt points to a value you violated. You lied, you broke an agreement, you acted carelessly, you used another person, you avoided a responsibility that was genuinely yours. This kind of guilt asks for repair. Acknowledge the act, apologize without manipulating for forgiveness, make restitution when possible, and change the conduct. Conditioned guilt often appears when you violate an expectation rather than a value. You stop being endlessly available. You say no without inventing an emergency. You choose a different path from your family. You refuse to keep translating your boundary into softer language. Someone is disappointed, and your body interprets their disappointment as a moral verdict. Use a simple test. Did I violate a value, or did I disappoint an expectation? Sometimes the answer is both. Perhaps the exit is necessary, but your delivery was cruel. Then own the delivery without surrendering the decision. You can say, I should not have spoken to you that way. I am sorry for that. My decision to step away remains. That sentence is emotionally mature because it does not use accountability as a trap door back into the old arrangement. Guilt becomes dangerous when it demands endless self-punishment instead of correction. Punishment can feel serious while changing nothing. Responsibility is more exact. It identifies what belongs to you, repairs what can be repaired, and refuses ownership of what belongs to another adult. You are responsible for your honesty, fairness, preparation, promises, and conduct. You are not automatically responsible for making every person comfortable with the result. Before you leave, reduce the decision to 4 lines. Not 4 pages, 4 lines. Line 1. What happened? Use observable language. The agreement was broken 3 times. The conversation repeatedly included insults. Private information was shared. I have been expected to solve recurring crises without cooperation. Avoid diagnosing the person's entire character. Describe the pattern you are responding to. Line 2. What belongs to me? Name your contribution without turning it into total blame. I delayed speaking clearly. I kept saying yes while becoming resentful. I made threats I did not follow. I returned without requiring changed behavior. I also spoke harshly in the last argument. Line 3. What will no longer continue? This is the boundary. I will not remain in conversations that become insulting. I will not lend more money. I will not continue the relationship. I will not discuss this decision through repeated messages. Line 4. What will I do next? This makes the boundary behavioral. I will end the call. I will communicate only about shared practical responsibilities. I will collect my belongings on Saturday with another person present. I will mute the conversation for 30 days. I will seek professional guidance before changing a legal or financial arrangement. The audit separates reality from emotional weather. Anger may still be present. Guilt may still appear. But the decision no longer depends on whichever emotion is loudest at midnight. Read the 4 lines the next time you feel tempted to reopen the entire case. Ask whether new facts have appeared or whether familiar's discomfort is asking for relief. Discomfort is not new evidence. When communication is safe and appropriate, a clean exit usually needs less language than anxiety wants and more clarity than avoidance wants. Use 3 parts: the decision, the relevant reason, and the practical next step. The decision. I am ending this relationship, or I am stepping back from contact. Or, I will no longer participate in these conversations. The relevant reason, the pattern of insults has continued after several conversations. Or, trust has been broken repeatedly. Or, this relationship no longer allows me to act with honesty and self-respect. The next step, I will contact you only about the lease. I will collect my things on Friday. I am not available for another debate about the decision. Notice what is absent. There is no complete biography of the relationship. No attempt to force confession. No prediction about the other person's future. No threat that they will regret losing you. Clarity does not guarantee a calm response. The other person may deny, bargain, accuse, charm, promise, or become suddenly reasonable. Their reaction can contain information, but it does not automatically cancel the pattern that led to the decision. If you have already explained the same boundary clearly, repetition may no longer be communication. It may be a request for permission disguised as another conversation. You can repeat the decision without creating new arguments. I understand that you disagree. My decision remains the same. This is not a magical sentence. It will not control the room. Its value is that it keeps you inside your responsibility. Prepare for the predictable questions before the conversation. What if they ask for one more chance? What if they promise immediate change? What if they say you are abandoning them at their worst? Decide in advance which questions deserve a practical answer and which ones only restart the argument. Preparation is not emotional armor. It prevents pressure from making the decision for you. If you owe a transition, make the transition explicit. Return property. Complete agreed work. Arrange necessary care. Confirm dates in writing. A clean exit does not disappear from obligations. It removes ambiguity from them. The less practical confusion remains, the less emotional conflict can disguise itself as unfinished business. You leave once when your words, practical steps, and future behavior all point in the same direction. After a necessary exit, the mind often behaves as if something essential has been removed. Familiar messages stop. A role disappears. The person who created pain may also have been the person who relieved it. Silence can feel less like peace and more like danger. This does not automatically mean the decision was wrong. It may mean the attachment, routine, identity, or cycle was real. Expect a withdrawal period. Do not romanticize it and do not obey every urge it creates. You may want to check their page, ask a mutual friend, reread old messages, or send one final clarification. Before acting, ask what you are seeking. Information, repair, reassurance, evidence that you mattered, a temporary reduction in loneliness. Then ask whether the action serves the 4-line audit or reopens the courtroom. Create friction between the urge and the action, remove shortcuts, archive the conversation, ask a friend not to deliver updates. Keep necessary communication in one channel. Use a written rule for practical contact. Fill the hours that were organized around the relationship with actions that restore ordinary life. Meals, sleep, work, movement, appointments, quiet company, and commitments you can keep. Do not make isolation a proof of strength. Trusted friends, community, and qualified support can be part of a responsible exit. Privacy is not the same as secrecy. Silence is not the same as being alone. The withdrawal period is where many exits fail. Not because the original pattern changed, but because discomfort became louder than memory. Do not ask, "Do I miss them?" Ask, "What exactly do I miss? And does returning require me to ignore what I already know?" It can help to separate 4 kinds of missing. You may miss the person as they actually were. You may miss the future you imagined. You may miss the role you played, such as rescuer, peacemaker, or indispensable one. Or you may simply miss relief from uncertainty. These are different losses. Naming the loss prevents loneliness from rewriting the facts. Give grief a place that is not the old relationship. Write without sending. Walk without checking. Speak to someone who can hold complexity without turning pain into a campaign. The goal is not to prove that the relationship meant nothing. It is to let meaning remain without using contact as anesthesia. You can stop contact and continue monitoring the verdict. Do they think I was unfair? Are they telling people a different story? Have they changed? Are they happier without me? Did my absence finally teach them something? Each question appears to be about them, but it often hides a request about you. Tell me I made the right decision. Tell me I mattered. Tell me I am not the villain. No amount of monitoring can permanently provide that verdict. Even if they apologize today, you may wonder whether the apology is sincere tomorrow. Even if friends agree with you, another person may not. If the decision requires universal agreement, you have not made a decision. You have started a campaign. The Stoic control distinction is useful here. Epictetus begins the Enchiridion by separating what belongs to our agency from what does not. Your judgments, aims, and actions are your work. Reputation re-agreement and another person's interpretation are not fully yours to command. This does not make reputation meaningless or excused careless behavior. It means you evaluate criticism by evidence and principle, not by panic. Ask for questions. Was I honest? Was I fair? Did I meet the responsibilities that were actually mine? Is there new information that should change my conduct? If the answer reveals an error, correct it? If the answer reveals only disagreement, let disagreement exist. The exit becomes cleaner when you stop using the other person's emotional state as a scoreboard. Their anger does not prove you were wrong. Their sadness does not prove you were cruel. Their calm does not prove you never mattered. Their regret does not prove you won. There is no victory in remaining mentally employed by the verdict. Create a limit for secondhand information. Mutual friends do not need to become reporters. If someone begins telling you what was said, you can answer, I do not need updates unless they concern safety or a shared responsibility. This is not fear of the truth. It is an attention boundary. The same applies to your own story. Tell it where telling serves support, accountability, or necessary clarity. Do not tell it everywhere in the hope that enough witnesses will finally settle the case. An audience can validate pain, but it cannot replace judgment. At some point, the story must become a lesson you live rather than a case you continue presenting. People sometimes return. They may return with an apology, a crisis, a memory, a promise, or a version of themselves that appears newly clear. The return can activate hope faster than judgment. Do not decide only from the emotion of the reunion. Use a re-entry rule. Words matter, but changed access should follow changed conduct. Ask what is different in observable terms. Was responsibility named without excuses? Was repair attempted? Has the pattern changed over time, not only during the threat of loss? Are practical safeguards possible? Can you say no without punishment? Forgiveness and access are separate decisions. You may release the wish to punish someone and still decide that closeness is not wise. You may accept an apology without restoring the old role. You may also choose cautious, limited contact rather than total reunion. This protects you from two extremes. The first is revenge, disguised as standards, making the person suffer forever because suffering feels like proof of self-respect. The second is guilt, disguised as compassion, reopening everything because their pain makes your boundary feel cruel. Neither extreme is free. If re-entry is considered, make it slow enough for reality to become visible. Do not give full access to a promise. Let consistency carry the argument. And if nothing meaningful has changed, you do not need a new closing speech. The previous decision can remain. A return is new information, not an automatic command. Walking away without anger, revenge, or guilt does not mean leaving every difficult relationship. Conflict is not always abuse. Disappointment is not always manipulation. A boundary is not a substitute for accountability, repair, patience, or honest negotiation. Some relationships need a better conversation, not an ending. Some need counseling, mediation, clearer agreements, or time. Some require you to hear how your own conduct has affected another person. Stoicism is not a language for avoiding vulnerability. A clean exit also does not mean leaving without practical responsibility. Shared children, contracts, property, work duties, medical decisions, financial obligations, and legal matters cannot be dissolved by a motivational sentence. Seek appropriate professional guidance where needed and keep necessary communication precise. Nor does calmness prove that you are right. A person can speak softly and still be dishonest. Someone can use philosophical language to escape consequences. Character is measured by the fairness of the action, not the temperature of the voice. Finally, Do not turn detachment into contempt. The person you leave remains human. You do not need to reduce them to a diagnosis, an enemy, or a lesson sent to improve you. Describe the conduct. Protect the boundary. Keep your dignity. Allow complexity where complexity is true. The aim is not to become untouchable. It is to become governable from within. That requires enough humility to repair what is yours, enough courage to leave what is destructive, and enough restraint not to make pain your identity. An exit creates empty space. If you do not decide what the space is for, old patterns will rush to fill it. Do not make the next chapter a permanent analysis of the last one. Reflection is useful when it produces a principle, a repair, or a changed behavior. After that, repetition can become another form of attachment. Choose 3 areas to rebuild. First, rebuild reliable conduct. Keep small promises to yourself. Wake when you said you would. Finish one delayed task. Answer the message you have been avoiding. Self-trust grows through evidence, not declarations. Second, rebuild attention. Decide what will receive the hours once spent arguing, monitoring, rescuing, or recovering. Work, study, physical training, spiritual practice, friendship, craft, rest, and service can return attention to a life larger than the conflict. Third, rebuild standards without building walls. Write what you will notice earlier next time. Which behavior will you address sooner? Which need will you state directly? What will you stop pretending not to see? The lesson is not that nobody can be trusted. The lesson is that trust should be accompanied by observation and self-respect. Peace, after an exit, is not the absence of memory. It is the end of memory's authority over your next action. One day, you will remember the person without rehearsing a speech. You will hear their name without checking the verdict. You will recognize the pain without needing it to become proof of anything. That is not forgetting. It is integration. The relationship becomes part of your history instead of the manager of your attention. Measure progress by conduct, not by whether every feeling has disappeared. You may have a difficult morning and still keep the boundary. You may feel tenderness and still refuse the old arrangement. You may remember a good moment without denying the destructive pattern. Emotional recovery is rarely a straight line, but your actions can still have direction. Once a week, ask a forward question. What did I do this week that would not have been possible while the old cycle controlled my attention? The answer may be modest. You rested. You completed work. You listened to a friend. You spent an evening without checking? These are not dramatic victories. They are evidence that life is returning to its rightful owner. Before you walk away, return to the 4 lines. What happened? What belongs to me? What will no longer continue? What will I do next? Let anger show you what was crossed, then remove it from the driver's seat. Let consequences protect reality without becoming an instrument of pain. Let useful guilt lead to repair, and let conditioned guilt lose its authority over decisions made with honesty and care. You do not need the other person to become a villain for your boundary to be valid. You do not need to become cold for your exit to be final. You do not need universal approval to act according to your considered judgment. Walk away from the conduct you can no longer participate in. Walk away from the fantasy that one perfect explanation will control their reaction. Walk away from the secret hope that your silence will punish them into understanding. Walk away from the belief that another person's disappointment automatically belongs on your conscience. Then walk toward something, toward words you can trust, toward responsibilities that are truly yours, toward relationships where honesty does not require erasure, toward a life that no longer needs an audience from the past. The cleanest exit is not the one that makes them regret losing you. It is the one that allows you to stop losing yourself. If walking away leaves you carrying the weight of their anger, disappointment, or judgment, the weight of their reaction takes this practice further. It is a practical Stoic guide to help you separate responsibility from guilt, stop over-explaining your decisions, and hold a boundary without becoming cruel. You can find it through the link in the description.